Hi, everybody. I hope that you're well today. As you're joining in, could you please just let us know via the chat where you're joining us from and what's the weather like? Um, I've heard from Ashley that in Josie, it's in Johannesburg, rather, it's very cold. And Mutile is also experiencing Josie weather in Nairobi, so please send her some sunshine, and which is why I'll be speaking on her behalf today. Um, so, just give me a second. Great. Welcome to this month's last Thursday session. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us today. My name is Felcia. I lead the Think and Care at Development Dynamics, or what we call the Insights Hub. Next slide, please. One of the things that we do within the Insights Hub is to organize sector and ecosystem convenings on the last Thursday of the month, which is where the name Last Thursdays comes from. And last Thursday is an opportunity for leaders in the social impact ecosystem and development ecosystem as well, working across different fields to come together and share insights on and learnings on matters of interest. And over the last year, we've explored topics such as intersectional feminism, movement building, social impact financing, and several others, which you can find on our recordings on YouTube. And we hold these convenings. We hold these convenings because the world seemingly has never been more uncertain. And we're living in a time of volatility and complexity where information is a new currency. And inequality is affliction we can't seem to just get our heads around. As practitioners and academics in the development and social impact sector, these are some of the challenges that we deal with. And none of us can do it alone, which is why we are all gathered here today. And at Development Dynamics, our approach is threefold. We use human-centered design to keep people at the center of solutions and innovation. We use systems practice to understand the interconnectedness and the complexity of matters that we are working around. And we use strategic foresights to prepare ourselves for a range of futures that might be possible. And today we're just continuing a conversation on impact measurement and management that we have been having from a systems thinking perspective. And my colleague Kevin will take us through a recap on that. And again, just thank you for joining. I can see we're all sharing on the chat what our days are looking like. That we are all, some of us are experiencing schizophrenic weather, hi Maxi. And some people are experiencing sunshine in the Caribbean. That's lovely. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you find this session insightful. Please keep on interacting within the chat, and we will keep this going. Over to you, Kelvin.
Thank you, Fel, for the invite and for the introduction. My name is Kabutu Kelvin. I manage finance, risk, and compliance at Development Dynamics. And I am the one who led the previous session on IMM episode 1, where we got to have a clear introduction of IMM impact at the helm framework. And we were able to explore and get to go through the first two phases of IMM, which are orienting and navigating. And with that, we went down to 2 breakout rooms where we got to discuss more about impact intent, as well as getting to analyze and delve deeper on impact intent. What's the intent of measuring the impact? Why are we measuring the impact? And getting to understand more about the timelines, getting to delve deeper on the value in the communities that we get to serve, getting to understand the milestones that we want to achieve at the beginning before we even start the impact measurement and management journey. And secondly, we got to get more into stakeholder persona mapping, where we got to build the persona for the stakeholder by understanding the stakeholder roles, by understanding their needs, by understanding their hopes, pain points, and the impact experience, the one that they want to see at the beginning, at the middle, and at the very end. Because impact measurement and management is not a tool of measurement, but a journey that you get to take with the people we serve and in the whole ecosystem in general. So with that, then that is what we got to handle last season and the first episode of impact measurement and management. And today, in navigating the impact measurement and management journey, I welcome my colleague Nicholas Mokwana to take us through that as we delve deeper. Nick.
Thank you so much, Kelvin. I do appreciate it. So as we get started, I want us to use the chat space and just mention what sector you currently make impact in. So whether it's the health sector, in the environment sector, the education sector, just throw that in the chat space. And as you do that, I'd like to go to the next slide. So as I can see, public health has already been captured, and this is from South Africa. And thank you, Tsepo, for sharing that. I can see health largely from Maxi. Terry, I operate at the intersection of health and education. Thank you so much for sharing. And as I continue monitoring the chats and seeing what sectors you're in, as shared by Felsher in the beginning, that we'll be looking at IMM, but also from a systems lens. And it's to appreciate that the IMM, when I mean IMM, is the impact measurement and management journey is not a straight through. It's just like a boat, navigating through unpredictable waters. And as we incorporate systems thinking, it's going to help us see what the whole ecosystem is about, and not just about outputs, but patterns, relationships, and ripple effects. The same way when you're on sea or in the sea, and how, waves, there are days that, you have calm waters, there are days that you have waves and the likes. So to ground this discussion, I'll be referring a lot to a real life disruption that happened in January, which is the 2025 USAID funding freeze. And this will be part of the case study that I'll be using throughout this journey and lessons. So I shared on, we started out with the orienting phase, navigating phase, and now we'll be focusing on sailing and tacking, but also from not just an IMM phase, but a systems phase. So as you can see, sailing focuses in the IMM lens. Sailing focuses more on in a project. You've reached a point where you have gone through all the piloting, the inception phase, and now you become more consistent and you're streamlining processes. You're becoming more cost effective, and it's becoming more of a SOP. It's becoming a strategic practice. It's becoming a documented practice. But that comes from the IMM, phase and how you look at it. But if we incorporate,
sorry, Nick, I think. Please come closer to your mic. We are hard of hearing you.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute. Maxi, hi, can you hear me now? Is this better? Okay. Sorry? Okay. Okay, thank you, thumbs up. Okay, sorry for that. So I was sharing that when we're in the sailing phase, we're looking at more simplified and consistent practices that lead to SOP formation and strategic practice in an organization. But when we come to a systems thinking, this is when in the sailing phase, the new normal where organizations must sustain delivery while monitoring performance is changed in the system. And if you look, for example, we're taking a case example of a Kenyan health NGO that was affected by the USAID funding freeze. You'll find that during this period, in the sailing phase, they had to dip into the emergency reserves due to the shifting donor priorities. And if the project was based on child vaccination outreach, what we'd be looking at still is to make sure that we consistently have vaccinations still deployed and redeployed into the community. We still need to continue with community trust building. But these are all at jeopardy when the freeze happened. But if you're to look at the systems thinking, we need to start thinking more on what are the systemic shifts and interactions that are happening? What are the adaptive capacities that can be used and utilized in the system for that program, for example? So if you were to go to the next slide, for example, if you're to look at the tools that we'll be using, if it was just an IMM journey, we'd be looking at your KPIs, your risk matrix, and your data dashboards. But at this point, when you incorporate the system thinking, then you need to move beyond the dashboard and start asking, what are the delayed consequences if things are not as status quo, for example? What are the systemic interactions and what are the adaptive capacities that help? Now, this is normally helped and enhanced by I'll give 2 to 3 resources, which is the outcome harvesting matrix, the systems indicator dashboards, and the trade-off metrics, which will be shared at the end of this journey that we're going through. So if we go to the next one, which we're talking about tacking. So tacking is where a lot of us were in 2024. And what I mean by tacking is that we were in a place of innovation. We're in a place where we are now thinking about ecosystem-facing discussions, and which is a very good place to look at, very good place in the IMM journey to be at. But now, when we look at the tools, if you can go to the next slide, you'll see that the tools that we use at this point is the TOC, the restructuring of a TOC to a strategic level document. Slide 12. Yes, the process tracing TOC, and you normally look at systems mapping at this point. But again, if we were to go back to the case study that we're using for the USAID freezing in our adolescent health program, you'll find that when we were at this level, when we were starting to think about how do we start looking at policy shifting, for example, because that is systems mapping, you will find that at that point, once the freeze has gone, even the buy-in goes, because a lot of this was tied to funding. But now, when we're looking at this stage, what we want to look at is how can we move and how can we adjust system ecosystem indicators that would have let us see or anticipated such a move that is coming. And from that level and that point in priority, started thinking of more at what we normally say organizational exit, in the sense that you've started a policy process, but it's not hinged solely on you. Because if you use a systems, an ecosystem indicator that helps in leveraging the different discussions, you'd be in a place to notice that if anything was to happen and you are not in a position to address it, then you do not become the reason for its death, for example. And that also leads to another tool that is called the leverage point matrix and the influence and power network maps that allows us to see how that works, how does that play, how does that intertwine, and why is this important, but now at an ecosystem level. If we go to the next slide, now this is where we talk about the difference, moving from matrix to meaning. And this is now heavily on just system practice in IMM thinking. So the USAID freeze in January 2025 made a lot of organizations really think outside their comfort zones when it comes to logical frameworks and theory of change. A lot of the organizations themselves had to really think about the strategic plan and what does the strategic plan mean at the current state that we're in and the current ecosystem that we're in. We started off by thinking about, defining goals, defining assumptions in the orienting phase. But now the question when you're in systems thinking are, who are the main actors? what power dynamics shape this place and this space. And for example, like in the health space, what is the power dynamics that actually exists there, and how do we leverage those points? And then what are the feedback loops? Because feedback is not initially at the top of our mind, you know. When it comes to the navigating phase, where we are thinking about now that we are out of, I would say, boardroom discussion into action implementation, we're actually thinking about learning. What does learning look like? What are we learning throughout this journey? But if you were to add the systems lens into it, the systems thinking lens in the IMM journey, is to ask what's shifting in the ecosystem as we learn. So it is saying that the data that we are consolidating should be telling us a bigger story that is an ecosystem story. And just like where we've come from at sailing, we are using the information from learning to streamline our processes, to streamline our systems. The next question comes in a systems thinking lens is what signals are we capturing? And signals being, if you remember the orienting phase, we're looking at the actors and what are the feedback loops and leverage points. At sailing phase, it should be those feedback loops that we have incorporated, those leverage points that we're incorporating, and the actors that we identified, how, and the power dynamics, how are they telling us what is happening in the ecosystem that we work in? And through that, what system signals are we getting? And how do we plan for that? And then when we come to tacking, it becomes, are we reinforcing a systems change, or are we reinforcing a systems symptom? And that's where now it becomes a connected chain, that from the first phase to the last phase, what are we tracking? Not only KPI and dashboard oriented, but system signal and power dynamics in the ecosystem. So with that, we are going to go into a very fun exercise. Today, we are more or less just setting the stage. But in our breakout groups, we are going to have a time to really discuss these three questions. What are the deeper systems or norms influencing the outcomes we are tracking? How does your IMM approach support or hinder transformation in these systems? And what would it look like to redefine success for a systemic impact lens? This time around, we want us to have about 30 minutes in each group. We'll be having 4 groups that are going to be opened. And the whole idea is to really dive deep and dive honest, but with the aim of using not only IMM thinking, but systems practice in this. So with that, I'd like to welcome either Mtila or Shiru to guide us on how the breakout rooms will be handled and managed. And then from there, we can dive into those rooms. Please, as you go into the rooms, be open. Don't be afraid to converse and be as interactive as possible, either in the chat space or the other tools that will be used in the group. Mtile.
Thank you, Nick. I'll be opening the breakout rooms in 1 minute, and you'll find a facilitator from the internal team at Development Dynamics, alongside some of our affiliates who will guide you through the conversation.
Chile, hi. Are you able to check if room 2's whiteboard is saved on your side?
I don't think it was.
Okay, so no worries. Okay, hi everyone. Hi everyone. I see some rooms are still coming back. Has everyone come back to the main hall? Can see group 3 is back, part of group 1. Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, hi guys, how are we doing? So yeah, 30 minutes really just flies by when you're having a good conversation. So we're going to just do a quick reflect. We had 4 groups. We had group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. So each group will have an average of, if I'm not wrong, 1 to 3 minutes time span, and then we will go to the next slides. So I welcome group 1, and I believe, group 1. And you can just summarize the conversation. You don't need to give like direct points, just summarize the conversation and what stood out the most.
Thank you, Nick, for sharing that. We had like a screenshot of what happened in group 1, but I don't know if we'll be able to bring that up. Because I had done a screenshot as well. But I would love to welcome Abiola to take us through that. Abiola?
Yes, Calvin. Good afternoon to everyone. We do not have a screenshot of what we discussed, but I'll just give an highlight of some of the
It's
things
very
we.
faint.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, is it clear now?
Yes,
Hello,
that's better.
confirm.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. So like I said, what our discussion centers around 3 key main points. Okay, and one of the things we discussed is the fact that how changing success can affect systemic impact, and some of the things that were focused. And another point is now that how behaviors can change, and also we talked about the influence of risk management practice, and how this risk management practice can also support risk management practice influence behavior. For instance, an organization that do not have risk management practice, they will have a different behavior when it comes to data collection, when it comes to water related impact management activities. You compare them to organizations that has risk management practice. So because this practice, there are procedures and structures that guide individuals on how to put on how to manage their own behavior. So those kind of documented procedures can also influence outcomes, impact management outcomes. I don't know if any other team members want to make some contributions, but I will yield the floor for others to go
on. Yes, thank you, Abiola. Kelvin, is anyone else from the room wanting to add anything else?
Yes. So I've shared a screenshot on what happened in this group 1. But thank you, Biola, for sharing that. But from a lens of what are the deeper systems or norms influencing the outcomes we are tracking, we had issues of institutional norms and policies, issues with cultural norms, i.e. the power plays within the political parties, economic issues with the economic systems. Public sectors have a different view of IMM, risk management practices from a whole systemic lens, fluid dynamics of the political space, which influences the outcomes we might see when tracking. And from the second one, how does IMM approach support or hinder transformation in the systems? To support, we had points around qualitative deep, listening of marginalized participant voices, capacity building of special interest groups, knowledge exchange sessions between seasoned leaders and the upcoming / aspiring, local-led participatory approaches, adaptive processes, and reflective processes, advocacy, and capacity building. From a lens of hindering, we had top-down approach miss of the input of communities we serve, because at times that is underseen and maybe not seen, and people, the leaders of the organizations that we serve at times get to make decisions without involving the communities that they get to serve. Short-term projects which expect a long-term impact and expect results within a brief period. And an example given there was a short-term project for like an year. But again, the impact that is expected to be seen is like a lot. And from that point, which is how would it look like to redefine success from a systemic impact lens? We had looking at the change from a systemic impact lens of outputs rather than activities and the numbers. Behavioral change on the way people conduct themselves from a lens of attitude change, because at times that is not measured, but we get to measure the activities. Defining success, we need to look back at previous successes that have happened, so that again, we get to, as we've been talking around, get to see impact measurement and management through the whole journey, get to see where were we previously, where are we now, and what are we looking forward to achieving, and what is changing through the whole process. And we had reciprocal relationships between practitioners and between practitioners and communities, and fostering skills and capabilities for practitioners and communities to be able to feel that they are self-sustained and self-organized. So that was it from group one, and back to you, Nick. I've shared a screenshot of it on this chat, and happy reading. Back to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Kelvin, and thank you so much, Abiola and room one, for the insights, for sharing, and for the rich discussion that happened there. I'd like to welcome room two, led by Ashley, who will welcome the speaker.
Thank you, Nick. We have Oratile, who's going to speak on behalf of our group. Thanks, Oratile.
Thank you. So I'm not too sure that we have a screenshot, unfortunately, but I will try to speak on the most important points as I can remember them. So please, Ashley, if I miss an important point, please feel free to let me know. But to answer the first question, sort of the three main points that we had discussed or identified with the issues that affect outcomes. The first we talked about was trust, or the lack thereof. So when we're talking about trust, we realize that a lot of the times in the space where we're working with people or for people, or to try and bring about change, because of a lack of trust, whether it's due to over-reporting or under-reporting results or the process or whatever it may be, the lack of trust really does bring about a hindrance to the way we view outcomes. And the second point, so what we talked about in terms of this point, is that a lot of the times we'd find, whether it be individual government, we found that a person's proximity to power or access to resources really does affect the outcome that they're trying to launch or they are in the works of implementing. And this is because system or an incumbent grant or incumbent whatever it may be, you are in a more privileged place than any other person or any other organization around you. So we saw that is really impacted by its access or in proximity to power or lack thereof. And we said that when it comes to the dominant narrative, when you only have one side of change or you are of change, it becomes difficult being unbiased, or they become biased. One story of change in a specific narrative when it comes to environmental sustainability does affect the outcomes of that specific endeavor. And the second question we talked about, I believe the question said something along the lines of what are we currently doing now in order to combat those hindrances to outcomes. And the first one we talked about documenting real life stories. And this is in specifically response to the dominant narrative. So we found that a lot of the times when you give people the avenue and you give people the space to be able to document how something has changed in their company or has changed their organization or has changed their grassroots movement, we are able to have a wider lens in terms of outcomes, in terms of ways to combat a specific problem, in terms of just a lot more room for ideas, a lot more room for new ideas as well. And the last one we talked about for this specific question is compliance. So compliance here really goes to address the issue of mistrust. So when we talked about compliance, one of the speakers had shared his own personal experience, how he would help specific organizations or people or grassroots movements to ensure that they're in compliance to whatever grant or in compliance to whatever guideline they are able that they are in or they are involved in. And this is to ensure a level of trust, and also it's to show a level of integrity that can work to combat the very first problem that we have of mistrust rather. And the last question that talks to redefining success, I think to sum up our discussion, and the best way we can put it is to look at a bottom up approach. And what it means is to ensure that the very same reason that we meet, or the very same reason that we network, is to bring change from the people or from marginalized groups or marginalized voices. So when we talk about the bottom up approach, it's to ensure that voices of all people, of all cultural groups, of all backgrounds are able to be in spaces where they would receive the help that they need most. So I think that sums up our discussion. Let me not take too much of the next group's time. Thank you. Back to you, Ashley.
Yeah, Retile, you have captured everything actually perfectly from room 2. So allow me to, yes, and I see the team is in agreement to that. Allow me to welcome room 3, and I believe that was
Thank you,
Chile,
Nicholas.
yes, thank you.
Yes. Jean, would you be ready to share as I put the whiteboard up on the screen? If not Jean, Flora, perhaps?
Well, I'm a bit very new to all of this, so maybe she'll be better than me.
No worries. I think I can take it up. A lot has already been said regarding the first 2 questions. I think the only thing that we saw as regards the third question on redefining success is, first of all, we need to ask ourselves, what exactly does success mean? So there's a requirement for a shift in the whole mindset and approach regarding success. So we need to look at how things are interconnected and interdependent, where success then becomes a factor of multiple dimensions, and not just the numbers that you see in a report. So I think that's what I would point out as the key insight that came out from our group.
Thank you so much, Mutile, for that. And lastly, room 4.
Thanks. Let me just try to see whether I can get the whiteboard from our end. Second.
Okay. So if once, are you able to share it?
No, I think it's Mutile who can share this. I can't share that to the host. Does anyone from my team? I think I had Shepo, Ivan, Roslyn, and Nicholas Kamala and Doriki Matthew. Does any of you want to share and do a summary? Perhaps Roslyn, you could go.
I wish the notes were there because I just feel I might miss out something. But one of the key things that I think may have not been mentioned so far is about when it comes to like the success, are we looking at sustainability? How do we bring that in during as we get to define our success? But in terms of like what are the deeper systems or norms influencing the outcomes? We had behavior, culture, and we also need to think of our health sector. How is it? What are we borrowing from? This is a key point from one of us, thinking about how do we decolonize the health sector to achieve accessibility and sustainability as well, because we are using a system that was borrowed from our colonial masters and implementing it in and infusing it with our culture. And remember now, maybe and we have said that our culture will definitely influence the outcome of what we are tracking as well. When it comes to the measurement impact approach, measuring and monitoring approach, there's the issue of policy as well. That may hinder the transformation of these systems, because yes, we're in different countries, we've got different health policies. Some of them are similar, but depending on how it's defined, would be able to. That is how we'll see whether we're able to measure all this impact and monitor effectively. And then, of course, there's the influence of the systems that we're using. Are they fully adaptable as well? And then back to the bit of the last question, which I started with when I mentioned about sustainability. We also, as we're looking at the success, are there places that we can borrow from? Like in South Africa, they're looking at the NHI, which has been adopted from the UK, where everyone deserves healthcare, and that is a right, actually. And then now, as we even look at this healthcare, how can we now make the preventive bigger than curative, such that looking at systems like the making the strategies of a preventive to be bigger than the curative, and that is how I would see how I would achieve that impact as well. I think that is a summary. I hope I've painted a picture
Well,
of it well.
Thank
you.
Add more. Thank you so much for sharing, and back to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you so much, Roslyn. Thank you so much, Oratile, Ashley, Tile, Kelvin, and Abiola. Thank you so much for these reflections. And before I move to the last slide, it's to ask this question that has been posed to us in the chat. How to handle the tension between contribution and attribution, especially in an ecosystem approach to impact measurements. for things like advocacy and policy influence, behavior change, and the likes. So I would like to pose that question to the room. Again, it's in the chat space. But how do we see us handling the tension between contribution and attribution in what we do in the different sectors that we lead? I'd like maybe 1-2 hands up, and then still chat space. I will be observing the chat space. And as I start, I can see Eva. Hi, Eva from Botswana. It's good to see you today. And we really appreciate your time here. She's saying, sharing, I think we should maybe use the use of the theory of change. This will outline the different roles and plausible effects towards the identified outcomes, mixed data collection methods, like having baselines, storytelling, and Eva, would you maybe want to unmute and expound more?
Okay, thank you. I was looking to respond to the question that Eric asked earlier, actually reflecting in terms of my experience. What I've seen to actually work, especially when we are trying to come out with results on an ecosystem, is that you find that there is no one correct method that can actually pinpoint to say you did 1, 2, and then this is the result. And then you find that when talking attribution and contribution, when you talk of attribution, you're talking about the results that you can actually own to say, I, Eva, did 1, 2, 3. And contribution is looking at what did you do that influence the outcome. So the intersection of all this results with us having a very complex system where you can say X and Y gives you Z. So because there are different actors that are going to be there. So with the theory of change, you would have different, there will be a map of some kind where you put out the different contributors that are going to end up giving you the outputs that drives to the outcome. And by having that, it means the roles are clearly defined. From there, you move on to say, how am I going to actually attribute to this particular impact that I've achieved or the outcome that I've achieved to these contributions? So using the theory of change, it means it outlines the relationships, the interventions that I carried out that might have a contributory effect to that outcome. And how you collect it is also important. I'm saying mixed data because you might need to collect the stories for somebody to actually come back and say, because I participated in this health program, this is how my health improved. It's their testimonies, their lived experience that you can actually own towards whatever it is we're offering. And baselines, where did you start? Was there anything being offered at that time? If it started at 0 and you go back into the field 5 years later and you realize that the outcome, the impact of what we had introduced 5 years ago is now being realized, either there's behavioral change, systems are now being inclusive, such kind of things. This is, you can be able to say, because I did 1, 2, 3, 5 years ago, this is the impact that I'm seeing that actually has happened. And storytelling, people will tell you how your input has actually changed their lives or have changed how they see certain things. And lessons learned, as you go through implementing all these interventions, there are successes and failures. The failures don't mean you did anything wrong or you are a failure. They are actually saying, look here and see how you can improve it. So a complex system will call for that to say, be able to indicate, to say, this one I can attribute to say it's resulted in this outcome. This one might have resulted in this outcome as well, but depending in terms of how you would measure it, because it's an intersection. There's no one best method, so there's borrowing here and there to actually come up with what you can actually own to say there's a probability that this intervention influenced the behavior change within this particular community, or by introducing this intervention, the system changed this particular way, because there are multiple factors that influence the results. Back to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. I think you have really elaborated the need for, it's not like a one times one being, it's not one medication. It's not one pill that solves everything. It's a mix and match of different aspects. Yes, Abiola. Yes, Abiola.
I would also like to make 1 or 2 points.
Yeah.
The reason is that I'm a consultant with KPMG, and one of our ongoing engagements is an impact management engagement, and the issue of attribution and contributions really came up. Let me just give you a short background, but I will not mention the organization's name. So the one key point is they were let's say organization A provided some resources to upgrade some healthcare facilities. So having done that, and also having been able to purchase the required medical equipment, and also being able to train some employees, it got to the point whereby being able to we now need to, we've seen changes in doing the impact assessment. We've seen a lot of changes, significant improvements, because we know we track the changes quantitatively. We are able to track the changes based on the data that we got from the healthcare facilities. And now it got to the point whereby we need to say that, okay, these changes that are occur, what is the volume, what percentage can we attribute to the attribute and say that this is because of the resources A has provided in the last 2 years. Actually, what we did, we look at we exhausted the entire outcome and see that without the organization A resources, this and this and this and this would have been in place. However, like I mentioned, we tracked them using numbers, but we got to a point whereby we attributed 70%. But when we sat down and then look at it again, we've seen a lot of externalities. By externalities, I mean there are other benefits that transcend from the facilities to other community members. How do we then account for those changes? So my point here is that as you are looking to pick a certain percentage for attribution and contribution, we should make sure that we look at secondary order effects and third order effects as a result of the initial activities that led to this improvement or changes. I rest my case.
Nicholas, I don't know if you have time, and I can also drop in. Of course, there's something I've posted in the chat, but I won't drill on it. But of course, looking at what the previous speakers just said, I don't know how we are going to handle, the NGO world where we find most of the implementation or managing most of the implementation in our communities or our development work, is that we've seen it over time become like a business where people are fighting for space and there's a lot of competition. So, and of course, working in silos and yet working on very short timeline kind of projects. And that's why you see we keep asking the question of whether development money has really brought about, or donor money has really brought about development in Africa. And I think the issue that we are discussing now is very pertinent as we look at such kind of dynamics. How can we encourage collectiveness, collaboration, and humility, transparency among the actors within our communities. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Flora. Yes, even maybe just to add on that point as I close and welcome Tilly to give us the last steps. There was an assignment that we were handling in which there was such a views collaboration and collective inputs. And I like the last term that you used, humility. It was an assignment where we had to bring together not only the funders but the implementers, the different account holders and the different account implementers to a table and be like, yes, we've implemented for the last 2 years, 3 years, but what are we actually learning? What impact are we actually seeing? Because the projects were very long-term projects, and from there we came up with a term that we use, which is utilization focused learning agenda, where it is back to what was shared early on by Eva. How do you use the different documents, the different inputs, the different tools that we've been talking about throughout this whole IMM journey, from your TOC to your baseline evaluation tools, to your KPIs, outcome harvesting metrics, and the likes, to tell the story? And I think what is really coming out is we need to tell real life stories. And what was shared in our group, who is dominating the narrative, who is sharing the narrative, who is leading the narrative in this space in IMM. With that, I can see we can continue this discussion for days on end. But I would like to go to the last slide, which is on some systems tools that we will be still sharing this, but just to brush it over quickly. We have the systems map, which talks about which is the tool. The tool is the causal loop diagram, which helps us identify relationships. We have the ecosystem engagement, which is about power play, power dynamics, and stakeholders or sector actors. And the last one is systems level metrics, which is what we have actually just been coming from this. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for the interactions, for the engagements, for sharing. And for those who did have a chance to unmute your mic, I hope the next chance and the next last Thursday's episode that is coming, when you join, you'll have a chance to unmute. With that, I'd like to hand it back to Mtile to close for us.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions and for bringing the expertise into this room. It's always such a great opportunity to learn from each other. And as Felsha mentioned, that is the purpose of having these discussions, bringing people from different geographies. We had someone from the Caribbean who has relocated to Africa, and there's such succinct and nuanced knowledge that comes from that kind of experience. So we're really grateful that you could all join us. What we're trying to institute these days is that in closing, we like to invite you all to say goodbye in your native language, quote unquote native. So if you are able to do that, please do unmute your mic and tell us goodbye as we wrap up, and you'll receive some information from us on when the next last Thursdays will be. So from Kenya, kwaheri.
Hosiami.
Kwaheri, Oriti.
Hosiami.
Thank you.
Oriti. Wow, Seppo, you're going to always confuse us with those words.
Hi, Papat.
I
don't know if
dialect is called Odabo.
Odabo.
Tionanana, Malawi.
Tionana from Malawi. Muraregwe. Wow. Flora, yes.
So
Abiola, thank you so much. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Ashley. Salin, Kale.
Salani Kale.
Wow. Benya, thank you so much. Oriti, Waidera.
Bye.
Have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much. See you in the next last Thursdays. Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one. Have a